know. I don't have to brief you. You're one of the pros here. Okay. You ready?
Sure.
Okay.
Do it.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Inside Look. I'm Jeff Lyons, joined by my co-worker, 8 years now, Arden Gregory, meteorologist Arden Gregory. How you doing, Arden?
I'm doing okay. Not too bad.
And just for context, we're recording this right after the big winter storm.
Yeah.
It was a big winter storm.
It was. The biggest one we'd had in quite a while.
It did not disappoint.
It did not. Yeah, it was a little less in Kentucky. As a Kentuckian, I feel like we got shorted a little bit, but it was still several inches of snow. So everybody got a few snow days out of it either way.
Yeah. What do you mean as a Kentuckian you feel shorted? It's not short shrift for Kentucky?
Indiana got the foot of snow. We didn't get that. So
were you really hoping for the foot? I mean,
the kids were.
As meteorologists, we want somebody to get the foot of snow if that's in a forecast.
Oh, absolutely. You want somebody to get it, but you don't want to have to drive through it. As people who also still have to come into work no matter what, a foot of snow is not something I was looking forward to digging myself out of. But of course, the kids were hoping for a foot.
But you have a sensible car. I mean, you've got a Jeep. You always get through. You're like the Mail and the St. Bernard. You always get through.
A beat up. I mean, it's ugly to look at. It has been through it. I have a beat up old Jeep, but the 4-wheel drive still works. The windows don't roll down, and the radio is iffy, but the 4-wheel drive works. So I'm getting getting into the station, snow or sleet or rain, either way. Like you said, I'm like the mail carrier. I'll be here either way.
And I'm kind of in my extended midlife crisis. I'm still driving a Camaro, which is absolutely insane in the winter, but I live close enough I can walk to work theoretically.
True.
However, in practice, walking to work probably would have been fatal Sunday morning. It was so cold and snowy out there. Well, I think for a lot of people, and of course, they've seen you a lot more now. You have our midday program now, First Alert at noon. And we're going to talk about that for a second. But just to circle around to the snowstorm, let's walk people through kind of the inside baseball behind the scenes on how we forecast that snowstorm and then, how it played out. So first off, what'd your gut tell you 7 days out when we all saw it on the models?
Well, I'm always a doubter. The 7 days out, I wasn't buying it for a minute. I thought, we'll get 2, maybe 4 inches. And then every day I said, well, maybe 4 to 8. And then, as it got closer, I was like, okay, man, this might really be something. But, it's so rare that, the climatology battles this. The idea of getting a foot of snow is so foreign here that it's really hard to buy that. You can almost always find a model that'll try to sell it to you.
Right.
But it's hard as a meteorologist with some experience to buy that when it's saying it a week out. But, as it got closer and closer, eventually you had to say, okay, they may actually be onto something. Every once in a while it happens. It's rare.
Yeah. I crunched the numbers, and I think the repeat interval for 8 inches of snow or more was like 40 it was like on the order of 30 some years. I think it was 32 years. So you kind of think, well, okay, when was that other big one? We're probably about due. But as you know from statistics, that isn't sound reasoning because you can have them back to back, So are you... Now, of course, I don't have small children at home anymore. So, the first thing I do is look at the models. When something's coming, I get up, get a cup of coffee, look at the model, and see what's happening. What's your day like? Are you peaking, or can you hold it off before you have to prep for work?
As a weather nerd, you want to. It's one of the things you want to look almost immediately, and so usually I'll try and look at a couple of things, a few updates and stuff, just on my phone even before I get out of bed, just to have an idea. But I really don't do any hardcore forecasting, digging into the models and things like that till I get to work. I know a lot of us do work from home quite a bit. Anybody who follows Byron Douglas on Facebook knows how much he works from home. But I just realistically can't get anything done at my home.
Yeah.
So I do have.
Well, that's understandable.
I do have 2 small kids, and they're climbing up in your lap and wanting to mess with the computer and whatever else, and so. I glance at a few things on my phone just to have an idea first thing in the morning. But once my feet hit the floor, it's mom mode until I get in the car and head into work. So
and your girls are young, 3 and 1, right?
2 and 1.
Or 2 and 1. That's right. They were close together.
Yeah, they're real close together. So one just turned 1 back in November, and the other's 2.5. So they're still pretty small and still, pulling on your leg and wanting your attention all the time, which is wonderful. I love being home with them, but it doesn't leave a lot of time for forecasting before you get into work.
Right. And sometimes, of course, when the weather moves in, whether it's severe weather or winter weather, it upends everybody's
Yes.
schedule, including ours. And so now you've got to shuffle to get somebody to watch your kids, right?
Yes, I am extremely blessed with a wonderful husband who he knew what he was getting into. You know, I was already doing this before, and I was already a meteorologist working here, in fact, when we got married. So this has been his reality from the beginning, that when there's active weather, severe weather, snowstorms and things, I, up and abandon him for hours or days at a time sometimes. So I had already warned him, kind of like with the alert days. We kind of do that in our home too, where I'll say, "Hey, I might end up having to work this weekend, just so you know. Put that on your radar that you might be on your own this weekend." And my mom watches our kids, which is a huge blessing. So I don't have to worry about if the daycares close and whatnot. It's just a matter of whether or not my mom can get to us, because we ran into that. My husband did have to call out of work on Monday because my mom was snowed in. She couldn't get to our house, and we didn't want the kids to get out in the snow. So,
Sure.
things happen, but between my mom and my husband, they're usually pretty good to cover the bases so that I can do what I have to do here at work.
Yeah, it does take supportive, or at least understanding
Absolutely.
spouses. We had occasions when I had small children where they came to work with me. We used to
Yeah.
do and you and your husband kind of do the swap too when you were working certain shifts where
Yep.
you have them in the morning, he has them in the afternoon, and you do the crossover. My wife was teaching in the mornings, and then I worked, of course, in the evenings. And there were more than one occasion I had the baby bucket,
Yeah.
and
The
would put them under
carrier.
the desk while I was broadcasting and kind of rock it with my foot. Natalie
Yeah.
was very good. My daughter, she could be quiet. Justin, a little more rambunctious because, of course, he was 3 or 4,
Yeah.
and curious and everything. And Patrick, generally obedient, but could be a handful too. So
Yeah.
it was fun. Sometimes you get somebody in the office to just kind of corral them for a little
Yeah,
bit
having
here.
them in the studio is a risk. Keeping them quiet is a hard thing to do at the ages
Yeah,
they're
it
at right
ups the
now.
ante, though. It makes
It
the coverage a lot more fun.
exciting.
And we're seeing a lot more of you now. Of course, we have our longer form weather show that we
Yeah.
do from noon to about 12:40 or so. Talk about that. And when this was proposed by our higher ups, our bosses, I thought, oh man, that's going to be a stretch because we're already working quite a bit.
Yeah.
And you jumped on it with both feet and said, yeah, I'll take that. So what
Yeah,
drove you?
it just kind of sounded like a fun new challenge. And it's funny that you mention we're seeing more of me now, because some people may not feel that way. Just as a side anecdote here, that's what the podcast is for, right?
Exactly.
Anecdotes. I had somebody stop me just the other day, and they said, "So I guess you're not doing weather anymore." And I said, "I'm on 5 days a week. What are you talking about?" But they watched the weekends.
Right.
They were loyal weekend watchers, and they said, "Well, they hired that Michael guy. You're not on anymore." I said, "Well, I'm still on, just not at the time you're watching." So depending on what hours you work, you may or may not see more of me, but I am on quite a bit in the middle of the day now during the week. The noon show has been a really fun new challenge. It's 14 First Alert at noon is what we ended up calling it. And kind of the background to this is in my very first job in TV.
Hazard, Kentucky.
Hazard, Kentucky. I had a lot of slashes in my title. So I was, a web content producer / meteorologist / news producer. And so I had, kind of a hand in every department there at that station. It was a small station where everybody does everything, And so I had producer experience, and so this idea of producing a newscast that was all weather content, I thought, if we do this right, we could make it really cool, and it could be really fun to do and give us an opportunity to branch out. I know anybody who's been doing the same thing for several years probably gets that sometimes it just feels like you come in and you do the same thing day in and day out. We're lucky that, the weather does change every day, so at least we've got that going for us. It's a little different, but you're still kind of coming in, you go through your routine, you make your forecast, you get up, you talk about it for 3 minutes, and then you're kind of done. On the air side anyways. Obviously, we've got all kinds of stuff going on the web and whatnot. But I thought this could be an opportunity to use my meteorology and my weather knowledge to tell stories and talk about aspects of the weather that you usually don't have time for, because you do only have 3 minutes. You want to keep it local and keep it focused on just what people need to know.
Sure.
This was more of, for those of us who just enjoy weather, if you had all the time in the world, what else would you talk about? And that's kind of the way I approached it. So, we expanded it where we do some national forecasts in that show. I get to talk about different weather happening all over the world. Sometimes we get weather videos from Europe and places like that where they get crazy snows and whatnot over there too. So sometimes even when the weather is quiet here, there's still cool and interesting things to talk about in other parts of the world. It gave us an opportunity to run your out and abouts that you've been doing.
It's the reason we have Out and About,
Yeah.
because when you and I talked about this show concept, and I give you 99% of the credit for kind of fleshing it out, but I said one key thing here is the rest of the weather team needs to contribute content,
Yeah.
because we can't just throw you a 30-minute broadcast hole and say, well, good luck, Arden. We'll see you around.
There's a lot to fill by yourself
And so
every single day.
everybody stepped up. So
Yeah.
Byron does the weather day in history, and of course that's his thing. We're able to play to our strengths.
Yeah.
I mean, Byron is like a walking encyclopedia of weather
the man
trivia
knows
and knowledge.
loves his history.
And
for
so,
sure.
so there's an outlet for him. I had always wanted to get back out and report and get around the tri-state. I mean, I do a lot of appearances at schools and things, but I wanted to tell stories.
Yeah.
And we thought, well, you need content maybe that's a little longer, to fill on those quiet weather days. So off I went, and that's been very gratifying for me to do. And Michael Fecca is building graphics and
Oh, yeah.
supporting you. And really, when Michael came in to do weekends, that just kind of opened up all kinds of possibilities for us here in the weather department. And he's doing a great job too. We have probably the strongest weather department we've had
Yeah.
ever
It's
here
a
with
great
4
team
of
right
us.
now.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
that we haven't had good ones in the past. I just think, I hope you agree, the 4 of us work really, really well together.
Yeah, and that's part of why I jumped on this opportunity. Is when I was working sort of the shift Michael's working now, I felt like I was constantly just kind of plugging holes, right? It was always, I had my weekend shift, but during the week, so much of the time, I was filling in for you, filling in for Byron. I was bouncing around all over the place. So to now consistently have kind of a set schedule and sort of my shows every day that I'm always on, I thought, okay, now that we're sort of settled, this is a chance to do something cool and something different. And so, it's been great to have those other teams of the First Alert team kind of jumping in and providing their different aspects to help me fill that time, because half an hour is a lot of time to fill by yourself, and I'm sure people by the end of the half hour are looking for somebody else. But it's cool, and I like talking about weather from all over the world and all over the country, and I think that's the part that I enjoy the most, is getting to find weather-related stories from all over the world and saying, this is probably not something we would run in a regular newscast. It's not really local. It doesn't have any ties to the tri-state. But you know what? If you like weather, it's a cool story.
It's interesting.
It's interesting.
And weather
that's what I like about it.
is such a driver, really, of viewers. And, research shows always that weather is the top content that a local station produces, because there's such interest in it. And this weekend is, case in point for that, this past winter storm. So what are your bones telling you for the rest of the winter? Are you going to wait and defer to the groundhog? This will air after the groundhog makes his prediction anyway.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much stock to put in my long-term predictions.
We were
both
thinking
blew the
Nina.
snow forecast
We're supposed
anyway
to
on the extended. Way back in November, we all had to give our snow predictions for the whole winter as a whole. And in one snowstorm, Byron Douglas won the entire thing, because nobody else had thought we would get this kind of a storm that we do only get, once every couple of decades, if that. So it's rare. And for that reason, none of the rest of us thought it would happen. So, what do I know? I think that I don't think we'll have any more of this. I think the rest of the winter will be quieter, but it does seem like it is trending pretty cold. I think it may be cold, but drier through the rest of the winter.
The surprise for me is just how cold it has been in this recent string of cold days. And of course, by the time this is shown, I don't know whether we will have tied that long running cold. And we had another one last year, extended run of very cold temps.
Yeah, right after the ice storm.
Yeah, and I keep thinking it's going to be an active spring. I don't know what is driving that. It's just feeling I have.
Something in your weather gut is telling you that.
No scientific knowledge to base that on, but we'll just have to wait and see. I was going to ask you another question about the weather, and I can't think what it was now. What was I going to ask you about the weather? I know what it was. Do you and you take pains really to answer every email comment and everything. Do you enjoy the feedback?
Depends on what kind of feedback
well,
it
I
is.
know. We all get that feedback.
Yeah.
I think the feedback leading up to this past winter storm was generally positive. You're always going to have naysayers that don't get the 12 inches of snow, or they don't read or listen carefully to what you said. And that's kind of the big challenge, is the nuance. It's like, well, not everybody will get 12. Some will get 4. And then you get kind of, people yell at us for being too broad.
Right.
Well, what's it going to do at my house?
I was telling someone a week before this winter storm ever happened, when we were first starting to talk about it and people were asking, I told them then, I said, honestly, snow is my least favorite thing to forecast, because I do think it's been fairly positive this time around, but generally speaking, after a snowstorm, it always feels like both ends of the spectrum, everybody's mad at you. They either love snow and they wanted more, they can never get enough, or they hate snow, they still have to get out and work in it or whatever it might be, and they're mad at us that it did snow. And it doesn't matter whether you nailed the forecast or not, somebody's grouchy about the snow. But yeah, it's interesting. I do think that the feedback for the most part has been positive. It's interesting to see how social media has changed how people get the forecast. I think people sometimes kind of shop around for the forecast they want.
Exactly. And there's so much out there now,
Yeah.
too. And a lot of it, there's kind of hucksters are looking for clicks, a lot of clickbait. On Facebook in particular, but any social media. And I always try to tell people, we don't, our pages aren't monetized. It doesn't matter whether you click once or a million times. It makes no difference here. We don't see a raise. We might get a kudo, but so we have no real dog in the click war.
Right.
However, somebody who's, trying to generate revenue with a page, it's in their interest, whether it's good or bad for the receiver, to generate those clicks. And you see a lot of them. And, we try to preach, to trust your source. Hopefully people understand that we're local and our interests are here. I mean, it snows on us too. And you build that trust up over time. But it is, sometimes you just feel like you're screaming into a pillow when you look at, I don't even really look much at any of the other Facebook forecasters, or that are out there. It is interesting though. And I can't remember if, I know that I heard this from a colleague within the company. Some of your internet forecast, like Ryan Hall, y'all. Yeah. And you even said your mom was going to wait and see what Ryan Hall y'all said. Didn't you tell me that she watches him?
There are a lot of people, and Ryan Hall's from Kentucky. So
that's right.
Are a lot of
he was in your market, wasn't he?
He's from
Hazard.
My original market. Yeah, he's from Eastern Kentucky. So there are a lot of, he has got a lot of fans all over the country, but especially across Kentucky. People feel a certain loyalty to him, I think. This idea that he's kind of this homegrown Kentucky boy who's, blazed a trail into internet stardom for himself. And he's a nice guy. We won't always agree on every forecast, but you could say that for everybody.
Sure.
But he's a nice guy and he does know his stuff. He's very smart. I've met him a handful of times when I was living out in Kentucky in the mountains there. But yeah, it's interesting because it used to be your competition was, the guys across town
the
here,
street, sure.
And now we've got competition, if you will, if you want to call it that, from people all over the country who are forecasting and running these pages, some of them local, some of them not. That, like you said, are driven primarily by clicks. Yeah. And sometimes the weather is eventful and exciting and you're going to get a lot of clicks. And then sometimes, we go through a stretch where it's quiet and sunny and there's just not going to be a lot. And at that point, those guys are hurting. This is how they make their living. Right. So they gotta find something for people to click
sunny
on.
and 72, whereas we look forward to it.
They got to find something for people to click on. And I think you have to sometimes take that into consideration when looking at those posts that, I don't fault them for it. They're just out there trying to make a living like everybody else. But sometimes you do get a little bit of hype on the internet for that reason.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too, at least the trend seems to be and we're talking about the streaming space, internet, social
Yeah.
media to some extent, it's as if those content creators, meteorologists, whatever, are trying to kind of cobble together their own like citizen National Weather Service, where
Yeah.
the Weather Service, has offices all over the country. It's a unified approach, standards, everything is very, not to use a pun, but predictable with how the Weather Service will handle
Right.
ABC. And the, kind of the disruptors, and Ryan Hall would be one of those. And I don't say that in a bad way. It's just
Right.
they're using the technology to deliver the content in a different way. You see entire states and regions now kind of combining forces, like in Alabama. James Spann, who's just a god in Alabama,
Yeah.
he started a stream.
Yeah.
Well, he's working for a station too. I think one of our stations.
Yeah. I don't
And-
really know how he's getting away with that,
and,
but he
well, the
is.
guy must work like 29 hours a day, but they realize, that they have an asset there on the broadcast side, and yet, he's looking at the opportunity on the streaming side. So it's a really strange time in the business to try to figure out, well, where do we stand? And we've
Right.
done more streaming here. At least our
Yeah.
company has adopted that early and promoted it,
Yes.
and we've seen tremendous growth in that. Do you enjoy the streaming kind of presentation over broadcast?
I like the streaming presentation in the sense that you're not really limited on time. If you want to really, break down and give people some inside baseball and dig into the nitty gritty of this is what I'm thinking, and not just this is what I'm thinking, but why, and here's what I'm looking at. I think there's an appetite for that. I think there are people out there who really enjoy that. I like being able to answer people's questions. Television is such a one-way medium. I give you the forecast and hope you were listening. And,
Yeah.
we all
Eat
go
your
about
peas, right?
Yeah, we all go about our day. Whereas when we're doing the streaming, especially when we're streaming on Facebook and something where you have comments, I am able to answer questions and make sure that I'm giving people the exact information that they're here looking for, which is what we strive to do anyway, is give the people the information they're looking for. But it is an interesting time in the weather enterprise, if you will, because we obviously are trying to meet everyone where they are. There are a lot of people that aren't watching TV as much anymore, who are using the apps, using social media, using the website, using streaming. And we want to make sure that those people also are getting the best weather information we can possibly give them. But at the same time, there's also a lot of people, especially the older generation, that are not on those platforms. And so we still very much so have a responsibility to our television viewers as well.
Yeah.
So to have to balance that day in and day out and make sure you're covering everybody on every platform, especially in a big event like this or severe weather and things like that, it can have you feeling pulled in multiple directions. But also, I think all of us got into this as a service to the community that we live in.
Yeah.
Especially those of us who are local, who grew up here. We ultimately, what we want to do is serve the tri-state the best of our abilities, and that's on every platform that they're on. And so it's tricky. I do like some aspects of the streaming, but there's also the sticky part is I feel like streaming also now comes with the expectation that you're on all the time.
Yeah.
And we have to be
it's
careful with
creeping
that, or
way.
we can
Yes, it
we
is.
can run ourselves into the ground if we're
Right.
not careful. But I think, if there's an appetite for it, give the people what they want, I guess.
Right. They'll be completely bloated by the time we get through this winter and spring. Arden Gregory, thanks for coming in and talking a little
Anytime.
inside weather, inside baseball about the storm last week. And of course, if you haven't seen Arden on our midday program, you can watch that. Right, it's actually 12:10 is when it starts, but
Right. The first 10 minutes is news,
Yeah,
and then everything
you
after
go.
that's all weather.
Monday through Friday, you can check Arden out there. You can watch or listen to Inside Look wherever you get your podcast or on the 14 News YouTube channel. With Arden Gregory, I'm Jeff Lyons. Thanks for joining Inside Look.